Hey, it's Myriam with HotHardware. I'm here in New York to show you the new Moto Razr Plus 2024 and the Moto Razr 2024. So these two phones are highly updated for 2024. Again, Razr Plus on the left, Razr Regular on the right. You'll immediately notice Razr Plus has a much larger 4-inch OLED display in the front, whereas Razr has now a 3.6-inch display in the front, just like last year's Razr Plus. So you don't have that little postage stamp display you had on the Razr. It's a full-on display in the front, but it's a little smaller. And it does make a little difference when you have widgets, which is a new feature, or when you show how much text you can put on the screen here. You see that. Quite a bit of a difference. Just 0.4 inches make. You have 3 rows of apps instead of 2, etc., etc. You can really see things here. So the other thing they've changed is in the back now, they all have some kind of vegan material. This is suede here on the Razr, and on the Razr Plus you got this classic hot pink color, which is an actual vegan leather that feels leathery. So that's actually different than before because some models had glass last year. Now you notice that from a chassis perspective, they all very much look the same here. They have the buttons in the same spots, all the ports in the same spots, and I'm going to walk you through all this. But as you can see here, they're pretty much identical, and that's because this year they redid the hinge. It's a new hinge mechanism. It's a little thinner, but basically it's just more durable. And both of these phones are IPX8 water resistant, which is also a big improvement over last year. Here on the right hand side, you have a microphone, the volume rocker, the power lock key, which doubles as a fingerprint scanner, of course, antenna bands. On the bottom here, you've got the speaker, USB Type-C port, 2 microphones, and then on the left side, you get the SIM tray, no micro SD, and on top, you just got another microphone here. Same with the Razr. They're very much identical. If you look here, you get the microphone, volume rocker, power lock key, that's a fingerprint sensor, antenna bands, and then you've got the speaker USB-C, 2 microphones, SIM tray on the left, and there's 2 microphones on the top of this one. But other than that, they're pretty much identical. So another thing to keep in mind is that these phones have stereo audio. There's a earpiece at the top here above the selfie camera that doubles as a speaker, so you can enjoy that. Again, that's not new. That was on last year's, but I just want to point it out. So that's the kind of in a nutshell difference. Now there are some other differences that are individual to these phones. You notice Gemini is installed here. There's some Moto AI features as well. So let me open up the Razr Plus and let's go through some of these differences. The Razr Plus under the hood has a Snapdragon 8S Gen 3. So that's actually the big difference here, is this is an 8S Gen 3. On the Razr 2024, you have a Dimensity 7300X. This is the newest mid-range chip from MediaTek. So Qualcomm versus MediaTek, like almost flagship versus mid-range. That's the difference on these two. These displays look similar because they are almost identical. 6.9 inches, 3000 nits peak, 1080p, and the Razr Plus here on the left has 165 Hz refresh, while the Razr has 120 Hz refresh. That's about the difference. Same with the cover screens, they're the same refresh rates on each phone. The selfie camera here is a 32 megapixel on both phones. That hasn't really changed too much since last year. In addition, storage differences too. The Razr Plus has 12 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage. That's UFS 4.0 and LPDDR5X, whereas the Razr Regular has 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage. It's pretty generous, actually, especially when you consider the pricing for these two phones. The Razr Plus here on the left is $999, whereas the regular Razr $699. So, you know, you pretty much are getting last year's Razr Plus here in terms of specs and performance. Whereas with the $999, you're getting a whole new phone, basically. So I think the pricing is right. 256 gigs of storage on both is also very nice. Each have slightly different camera systems, so let's dive into that right now. The Razr Plus here has a slightly more bumpy camera. As you can see, they stick out a little more. It's pretty obvious. And both of them are 50 megapixels now, which is a pretty big improvement over last year. The difference, though, is that the ultra-wide is gone. No more ultra-wide, no more macro either. The ultra-wide doubled as a macro with autofocus. This has a 50 megapixel 2x telephoto. So if I fire up the camera here, you'll see immediately you don't have 0.5x anymore, you have 2x and you have 4x. And what's interesting is that the zoom lens is 50 megapixel, but it doesn't actually have OIS on the telephoto, only OIS on the main sensor, which is kind of interesting. Also, the main sensor is 85-degree field of view, so it's not going to replace your ultra wide, which is a bit of a bummer. But camera performance should be higher, and Moto tells us that in their focus groups, in their anonymous data usage of the phone last year, they found that the Razr Plus users were really focusing more on selfies and zooming than on ultra wide, so they made a choice. They wanted us to have a 2x telephoto. Now, on the Razr Regular, the 2024, we have a 50 megapixel main sensor with OIS. It's the same sensor here on both, but the ultra wide is a 13 megapixel with autofocus, so it doubles as a macro. So it's basically the same ultra wide we saw last year on both, in fact. So that's the differences in camera. So remember, if you want to get an ultra wide, you'll need to get the Razr, and if you want to get a telephoto, you'll need to get the Razr Plus. That's kind of be the deal. So another difference is that the Razr has a 4,000 milliamp hour battery, 45 watt charging, and that's wire charging, 15 watt wireless charging. So faster charging speeds, bigger batteries all around. That's a big improvement as well. And then the regular Razr here has a 4,200 milliamp hour battery, and it does 30 watt wire charging and 15 watt wireless charging. So again, an improvement. The battery is a little bigger because the cover display is smaller. That's what they say. So overall, you're not making that many compromises when you're switching over between these two phones. Either way, you can't go wrong. It's just a matter of price. What kind of cameras you want are really going to set apart these two phones. And so basically, no matter which one you pick, you're going to get a good experience. As I mentioned, there are some AI features here. Moto is kind of following in Samsung's footstep very much with things like, you know, summarizing emails, all that stuff. They haven't given us much info about it yet, so stay tuned for more details on that. The big news on the cover screen is on both phones, you can now pinch like this to rearrange all and go directly to a card, basically. Move them around if you want, like that. So, I mean, this was there before, but it was a lot harder to get to. Now it's just a pinch back. So that's actually really cool. And then, of course, there's widgets. And as you can see here, I've got the YouTube Music widgets and the Google Translate widget. So yeah, you can edit these widgets. You can add more. Here are a bunch of them you can put in. For example, if I want to add another Moto widget here, I can do that. Just drag this here and then boom, I've got my widget, okay? And they've announced more software features, and we'll test that out in the review. So yeah, stay tuned for more content. Please like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the bell. Tell us in the comments, what phone is right for you? Would you go for the Razr Plus or the regular Razr? $999 versus $699. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Stay tuned for more videos soon on HotHardware.